The World Economic Forum annual meetings for 2022 started on the 23rd of May. Annually, delegates across the globe gather to discuss many pressing matters that affect the global economy and to build a problem-solving communities and initiatives. Good day and welcome to this Focus On segment. I'm Dewald Rademeyer. Today, we will put the spotlight on one of the key agendas at the World Economic Forum, climate change. Garth Napier, Managing Director of Old Mutual Insure, joins us from Davos to explain this topic in more detail. Good day, Garth. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good day, Dewald, and good day to all your listeners and viewers.
Now, Garth, before we get into this, what is the atmosphere like at Davos at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit mixed. I think on the one hand, all the delegates are very happy to be meeting in person. So the forum hasn't been held for the last 2 years. So I think there's a bit of excitement to see people again. But it's also been very muted. I think there's a general realization that we are meeting at a very difficult time in our history globally. So you've got the Ukraine war, which is very topical here at the moment. The global economy is still recovering from COVID, and we're seeing some lockdowns in China and rising infection rates in North Korea. And then obviously the world economy has taken a bit of a downturn in the last few weeks with rising inflation and supply constraints because of the Ukraine war. So I think it's been a bit mixed. On the one hand, excitement, but I think very muted from an optimism point of view.
As I mentioned earlier, or in the beginning, we're talking about climate change. And from my understanding, India is restricting their wheat exports due to heat waves. Parts of Germany was hit with tornadoes. KwaZulu-Natal this weekend again got hit by floods. And that's like, a month prior or after the previous devastation. Two parts to the question. One part is, have your organization, Old Mutual Insure, completed their assessment of the damage in KZN? And the other part of the question is the impact that the climate change has on the insurance sector.
Yeah, I think, Dewald, obviously too soon to have assessed the impact of the floods over the last 2 days. But going back to the floods that happened at the end of April, we have assessed them. We received over 2,000 claims from our clients. And I think in a couple of days' time, we have a financial results update as part of the Old Mutual AGM, and we'll disclose there what the actual financial number is. But I think the big thing is the number of clients impacted. It's by far the biggest kind of event we've had in the last 4 or 5 years as a natural disaster. We've never had that many claims. In terms of what we can do about it, it's quite a difficult question. You know, what we can do in the short term is maybe a little more limited to what contribution we can make in the longer term. I think in the short term, our focus is really around helping our clients understand what types of risks they may be exposed to as we see an increase in natural disasters, because that's what we're seeing. We're definitely seeing an increase in natural disasters. So quite a bit of work is going into helping identify which clients are maybe living close to or below floodplains, or making clients more aware of, areas that are typically hit by hailstorms, so they can think about protecting their assets in those areas. Farmers who are more likely to be impacted by droughts, and having the conversations with them. So I think that's one of the things we're looking at, is how can we, play a role in informing our clients of the risk. I think in the medium term is really partnering with government around infrastructure. I think there's been lots of conversations in KZN around, could better infrastructure and better maintenance of infrastructure reduce the impact of the natural disasters? So could we have saved more lives? Could we have seen less properties damaged by better infrastructure? And I think we can play a role in partnering with government on that. And I guess in the longer term, firstly, as a corporate citizen, what can we do to help reduce the impact we have on climate change? So what can we do in terms of reducing our carbon emissions? As an investor in assets, as you know, the insurance industry invests assets on behalf of policyholders. We're definitely looking at what role can we play in driving investments to more sustainable funds or projects like solar, like wind. So I think those are some of the things we're having a look at.
Now, Garth, before we get to the investment that you just talked about now, steering it to more climate change, I want to take a step back. What are some of the mitigating factors for climate change that you feel should be addressed at the World Economic Forum?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's very clear kind of goals we need to achieve as a global economy or global citizens around reducing carbon emissions to reduce warming and hopefully limit it to 1.5 degrees by 2050. I think a conversation I'm very keen on engaging in and being part of is really around a just transition. So how do we achieve that in a way that doesn't unfairly or put undue pressure on developing economies like ours? As you're aware, we're very reliant on coal for generation of electricity. So whatever targets and goals we set ourselves, I think as a global forum, we've got to be taking that into account. So the first one is how do we think about the just transition? I think the second one is the funding. So we're going to need support. South Africa, the rest of Africa, I guess, and some of the other developing countries in terms of how do we achieve that. Thirdly is the skills. I think we underestimate the skills that we need to have to be thinking about getting to net zero. So if we make a commitment to, for example, not having coal as a source of energy generation, what new skills do we need to make sure that our solar plants, our wind plants, our hydroelectric plants are running efficiently? So I think those are kind of the three parts of the conversation I'm very keen in getting involved in.
Now, you're mentioning just transition, you talk about skills training. Is that part of the investment in climate change that you're hoping to see?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, very good conversations today around how can we collaborate better. I mean, a big theme of this conference is regional collaboration and global collaboration. So I think, that is something that's got to be part of the just transition is how can we, make sure there's enough skills transfer, so making sure that we can benefit from, advances that some of the other countries who are ahead of us on this journey can share with us and make sure we can also achieve the same targets.
Now, I want to take another step backwards, Garth. I want to find out from you, the insurance companies, how can insurance companies prepare better for risk on climate change?
Yeah, a very difficult one, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we probably, like everyone else, will be impacted by it. As I said earlier, I think what we are noticing is an increased frequency in these natural disasters. So I think the role we can play, as I said earlier, is really making sure we spend more time making clients aware of where and, how often some of these natural disasters may happen. So I think that's one role, just educating our clients and making sure that, if they are in areas that are more prone to natural disasters, they're aware of it and can start taking some measures to protect themselves and their assets. I think that's one. I guess the second one is really around making the investment in analysis and trying to model what the world looks like with climate change. It's a very difficult thing to do because you can't rely on past data. We don't know what's going to happen if, the global temperatures increase by 1 degree, 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. But I think we have the resources, we have partners in our reinsurers, we have global resources. So I think we can invest the resources to try and model what this future impact could be on the industry. And I guess lastly, as an industry is partnering with government, which I've mentioned. I think there's a need to partner on infrastructure to make sure that when these events do happen, we can limit the impact they have. And also partner with governments around disaster support and relief. So, we can't avoid it. It's going to happen. Let's make sure we can limit the impacts or lessen the impact and, make sure we're there to support the communities when they are impacted.
Now, Garth, what I also want to know from you is, like I said earlier, you are at WEF for the week. What are you aiming to achieve this week? And also on the other side of that, what are you hoping to gain from this week?
Yeah, I think there's three conversations I'm going to be part of. The one is the climate change, which we've touched on. I think the second one is regional collaboration. I think, COVID has definitely highlighted that finding solutions to the challenges we face, we can't do it alone, either as a country or continent. So how do we drive better collaboration? So secondly, I'm hoping I can build a network of people who are interested in similar topics. I think the last one is really around inclusive growth. I think we all know and aware of the challenges we face as a country around inequality. And it's one of the things that I, very interested in having discussions and debates around. As Old Mutual, we've made quite a lot of investments in SMEs, and it's a part of our social responsible investment that we're very keen on continuing to drive and push. So having conversations around how do you drive inclusive growth globally, I think is quite an important conversation. What I'm hoping to get out of it is really just making sure that, it's a great learning experience. You're learning from experts who have done some amazing things in terms of, for example, reducing carbon emissions, or even, restoring forests to make sure you have carbon sinks that are actually removing carbon from the environment. So I think the opportunity to engage with those experts has been good. I want to make sure we land the message around the just transition. Again, I think it's an important message to land. We've got to make sure that everyone here, and I guess everyone, even those individuals who aren't at REF who are thinking about getting to net zero, appreciates the challenges that the developing countries are going to face in making a contribution and making sure that that remains on the agenda.
I want to thank my guest, Garth Napier, Managing Director of Old Mutual Insure, for bringing us some clarity on the impact of climate change on the insurance sector. Until next time, goodbye.